Hi everybody. Today we are looking at differences in North and South Korea, and specifically the leaders who have emerged in the last century or so. So we're going to mostly focus on Kim Il-sung in North Korea, and then in South Korea, Syngman Rhee and Park Chung-hee. So we will look at those today. Okay, so Kim Il-sung. Let me move my head out of the way. Kim Il-sung was known as the Great Leader. He grew up in Manchuria and actually led a group of anti-Japanese guerrilla fighters, and they often collaborated with the Chinese communists. So, just so you know, that's part of his background. During World War II, he actually spent most of his time in the Soviet Union. So, he becomes the first leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which was neither democratic nor republic. But that's the official name for North Korea, even to this day, DPRK. So he developed his own philosophy called Juche. And I want you to read a primary source in which he talks about Juche and establishing it. And we'll look at that some. We'll talk about it. But it's just important that you understand why is he emphasizing Juche so much in this document on eliminating dogmatism and formalism and establishing Juche in ideological work. So how does he define it, or how would you define it in your own words based on what Kim says? Did he believe what did he believe North Koreans must do to have a successful revolution? And how did Kim's interpretation of communism differ from others that we've looked at? So there are plenty of different people we've looked at, but how does his interpretation differ? So, like a lot of communist leaders, Kim Il-sung had a lot of cult of personality surrounding him. Lots of propaganda posters, big, huge images of him in public places. This is in keeping with other communist leaders. Mao did the same thing. So did Stalin. And these images are still up today. You can see in North Korea today, here's a humongous picture of Kim Il-sung on the left. You can see how small the people are in the foreground compared to Kim Il-sung in the background. To the right is actually Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong-il, and we'll look at him in just a second. Adults in North Korea have to wear lapel pins in memory of the Kim family. So I don't know if you can tell, but right here is a little bitty picture of Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung also has his own song, and I want to share some of this with you. I found this on YouTube, but you can find it there yourself. But he has his own song, and I'm just going to play some of this. If you're interested, you can read the history of the person who wrote the lyrics. But here's the song to Kim Il-sung. There's more to the song, but you get the gist of it. I can put the link to this up if you're interested in seeing more of it later. But anyway, that's Kim Il-sung is the first leader, so he's the great leader, right? And Kim Il-sung is a communist, but, with Mao or Stalin, they all also were in a communist country, and when they died, other people who weren't related to them became the next communist leader. Kim Il-sung created an interesting sort of twist on the communist regime. He created a kind of communist monarchy because he was the leader, and then he died, and then his son takes his place, Kim Jong-il, who is called the Dear Leader. And he ruled the country from 94 until 2011, and a lot of tense relations between North Korea on the one hand, and then the United States and the West on the other hand. Whenever President Bush was in office, in his State of the Union address, President George W. Bush, he referred to North Korea, along with Iraq and Iran, as an axis of evil. So, in the early 1990s, North Korea began to embark on a plan to develop nuclear weapons, which they have done. And so that's one of the reasons why North Korea is such a threat to this day. Kim Il-sung, the great leader, Kim Jong-il, the dear leader, and then his son, Kim Jong-un, who is ruling North Korea in the 21st century. Supposedly, Kim Jong-un had plastic surgery to make his face look more like his grandfather's, Kim Il-sung. I don't know how much credibility there is in those reports, but that is what people have said and written about, which makes you think just how important it is in North Korea for, at least for Kim Jong-un, to appear like his grandfather, the great leader. In South Korea, you had a very different situation where the United States ushered in democratic elections that brought Syngman Rhee to power. He was the first leader of South Korea, what is officially called the Republic of Korea. Actually, Syngman Rhee had a PhD in political science from Princeton. So he had been educated in the United States. He was married to a woman from Austria. So there's a lot of, this guy he was a lot more cosmopolitan, a lot more worldly, than you might imagine. He had been in China during World War II, but he returned with U.S. occupation forces and was kind of a stranger in his own land because he'd spent so much time in other places, aside from the southern parts of Korea. So, most of his adult life, he's in exile in the U.S. He was in China some during World War II. He had been chosen, so Syngman Rhee is here on the left. He had been chosen, along with Kim Kyu-sik, to represent Korea at the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 when we talked about Woodrow Wilson and self-determination. Korea had its own Declaration of Independence, remember, back in 1919. But Syngman Rhee was not actually able to travel to Paris. Only Kim Kyu-sik could do that. But he's the first president of the Republic of Korea, which was a constitutional democracy. If you look at Korea's constitution around the same time period, or South Korea, let me be specific, South Korea's constitution, it's modeled very heavily after the U.S. Constitution. And we've seen this before in our class, how the West, and the United States in particular, influences the political formation of these countries after World War I and World War II. So, the South Korea's economy was largely dependent on the U.S. for decades. South Korea had been one of the poorest countries in the world. So Syngman Rhee helped to get South Korea on its feet after World War II, but then he was overthrown in a coup. So Park Chung-hee became the leader of the Republic of Korea. He led a military coup to get rid of Syngman Rhee.